I'm saying that. Hello. All right, good morning and welcome everyone. Happy Earth Day. My name is Lizzie Rosenberger and I am one of the co-founders of the NGEN Speaker Series. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a fantastic program for you. NGEN is the Next Generation Explorers Network, which in your programs you can read a little bit more about. We are in our 4th year of our speaker series, and we continue to share with you how the next generation of explorers are changing the face and future of exploration. We believe that showcasing their work benefits us all. We know that you will leave here today feeling inspired with new ideas, new connections, and renewed curiosities. I'd first like to acknowledge all of the key people who helped to make the speaker series possible and thank them for all of their time and effort and work, beginning with Brianna Rowe, the co-founder of the NGEN Speaker Series, and our committee members Adam Gordon, Grace Cordson, Anna Isserman, and Alex Berkowitz. A huge thank you to also our Explorers Club staff in Kevin, Brooke, Alex, Luis, and for all of the coordination and assistance that you have helped us with. And thank you to the club for their growing efforts in the support of NGEN, which includes our grants, events, and membership programs. And also for all of you, if you would like to join our NGEN, you can sign up on Facebook or come talk to any of us afterwards. It's also in your program, a plug for it as well. We have a fantastic group of speakers for you today. We have intentionally selected the program to be diverse backgrounds and topics to showcase the breadth of the work that our next generation of explorers are pursuing. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for joining us today, coming in from around the globe. We have California, Poland, South Africa, Hong Kong, and as close as Brooklyn. And thank you for spending the time to connect with each of us and meet with us ahead of time and prepare for today. We're really looking forward to hearing from each and every one of you. At the end of the event and throughout the weekend, please be sure to connect with each of our speakers and chat with them further. As you're going to hear, they have fantastic backgrounds and experiences, and we hope that you can share your own experiences as well. With that, I'm going to now turn it over and introduce our MC for the event, Adam, who's going to take us through the event and introduce each of our speakers today.
Hey guys, my voice is going to be the annoying one you have to hear between all these more amazing people. As Lizzie kind of said, we started NGEN with the idea that the club needed to be a better place for young members. This is one of the most amazing parts of that, but everything we do with NGEN has been super fantastic. We have a mentorship program, we have events. It's really been amazing to see how much it has allowed all these cool people who are young doing amazing things. Like, imagine that, young people are actually doing pretty cool exploration too, not just the more experienced members. It's one of the key points of NGEN is that it's not just for young members. It's a way, and it's a sort of focal point for the whole club to be better about making sure that the priorities and needs of young members are met. So that's my last little plug. And now, again, as Lizzie said, we've got some unbelievable speakers. These guys are incredibly intimidating. We're starting off with, and I'm going to get this, I worked hard on this name, Matthias Wrazidlo. Wrazidlo. Did I get that vaguely right? Vaguely right? Okay, cool. Matthias is a mechanical engineer. He is a PhD candidate from Silesian University of Technology. He is obsessed with unique plants and biodiversity of the tabletop mountains in the Guyana Highlands. Matthias is going to tell us about how he's using his his engineering skills to help conservation through cultivation. It's a very exciting presentation. So without further ado, here's Matthias.
Thank you for having me. As you see, my name is Matthias. I come from Upper Silesia in Poland, which is not an obvious place for a person to grow his interests in the natural world. I grew up in a place that's got its landscape marked with mountains, but not natural mountains, man-made mountains, slag heaps, and mining shafts, as I come from a area with long engineering traditions and mining traditions. My family also has a long history of engineering traditions. So, obviously, I had to become an engineer myself. And what you will see here in a while is the landscape that I grew in. It's the town of Redutove, which I was born in. And is this presentation going? I was born in the city of Redutove in southern Poland in Upper Silesia, and what you see here is the mountain that I was seeing behind my window through all of my childhood is one of the biggest slag heaps up in Europe, actually, which is called Charlotta. So this is the landscape that I grew up in, and as I said, it's not an obvious place for interest in the natural world to grow, but everything changed for me when I was 9 years old and I saw this little plant during a lesson at school, and I heard that this sundew, this carnivorous plant, is able to consume and grow using predatory skills. And I was so captivated by this fact that I started exploring those plants myself. I was asking my parents to buy me those plants. I started collecting them on my windowsill. I started exploring their habitats, first in Poland and in Europe. And eventually, this passion has taken me all over the world, especially to South America. Here you see the humble beginnings of my collection. plants grown on the windowsill. That's how I was gathering skills for more ambitious projects. But this book, when I got it as a Christmas gift, when I was probably 13 years old, this has changed my life. The Lost Worlds of the Guiana Highlands by a British explorer, Stuart McPherson. This is where I first learned about the existence of those gigantic tabletop mountains in South America on the border between Venezuela and Guyana. And the moment I learned about those places, I got obsessed. As you see, they are totally unique kind of landscapes, like islands in a sky that have been isolated for millions of years and are characterized by unique biodiversity on their summits, and actually gave the inspiration to Arthur Conan Doyle to write his novel, The Lost World. But this plant was the most interesting part for me. It's called Helianthera, and it's the endemic carnivorous plant that's native to the summits of those tepuis, of those tabletop mountains. But then I started using my growing engineering skills to combine the technology with my interest in botany. I started developing those grow chambers, the devices to replicate the environment of the top of the tepuis. I started collecting plants from this place through my contacts with botanists, with botanical gardens, with scientists, other collectors. And that's how I started gaining practical experiences on how we can help the conservation of those plants through cultivating them. The first time, though, when I had the chance to explore those places myself, was an expedition to Venezuela, to the plateau called Acopan Tepuy that you see in the background here. It was in 2017, and it was supposed to be my first and only occasion to actually explore those places. I had no prior experience in the tropical regions. I spoke no Spanish, but I took the chance. I joined the expedition, and that was the first time when I got the chance to actually see those places with my own eyes, to see this beautiful biodiversity there, to learn about the environment of those plants, to see them growing in their natural environment. And that's how I started learning more and more, and combining this with my engineering skills to perfect those designs, so that I could help propagate and cultivate those plants outside of their natural environment. But this first expedition ended fast, and I immediately afterwards I started trying to find ways to keep exploring those places, and that wouldn't have been possible without the help of the indigenous people of the region, the tribes of Pemon Arecuna, Pemon Taurepang, Camaracoto, and Acahuayo, who helped me organize my own expeditions later on, both in Venezuela and in Guyana. So that's how my passion evolved from just taking care of the plants and focusing on the plants themselves. I started focusing on the culture and the indigenous people as well, because they are the true wardens of the places that I was visiting. And that's how I learned to share my knowledge with them and to learn from them as well. That was the picture that you see here. I was taken in Guyana during a presentation in one of the indigenous villages in Purima, where I was presenting my passion for plants to those people. And it's actually amazing when you see people interested in your work, who are so excited that somebody is coming and giving them something that they weren't aware of, because those plants are very often very small, inconspicuous. So it's very exciting for them as well to learn something new about the places that they live in, and it's exciting for me to share my knowledge and gain new knowledge from them. Whom you see here on this picture is my friend from the Pemon Arecuna tribe, Kalio Eliman, whose story is actually pretty interesting. What you see here is one of the orchids that we've discovered, a new species of orchid that we've managed to discover during one of our expeditions. And as I come from a, let's call it in some way, indigenous region as well, as I speak my own indigenous quote-unquote language myself, I decided to give the honor of naming the plant to the local indigenous tribe of Pemon-Arikuna, to choose the name not in Latin, but to choose the name in their indigenous language. And that's how we call this new species of orchid Epidendrum Kataruni ariku, which in Pemon-Arikuna means a tall flower. But of course, when you explore those places, it's impossible not to see the destruction that's being caused by mining. Paradoxically, the place where the tepuis are is actually the place that was believed to be the location of the legendary El Dorado. And it's actually true that it's full of gold, full of diamonds, but in order to get to it, people have to dig deep into the riverbanks and poison and destroy the biodiversity. So it's always a bittersweet thing when you're exploring those last pristine places on the planet, and you see both the magnificent landscapes, the untouched forests, but when you're getting there, you are seeing that the civilization and the destruction is getting closer and closer, even towards those sacred, pristine places. What you see here is actually some slides from our last expedition from 2019. I went together with my friends from Guyana. I managed to trek up to the northern sector of the legendary Mount Roraima in Guyana, which was probably one of the first expeditions, like independently organized one, that managed to reach this place, which probably is one of the last truly untouched, truly pristine places in South America, and where you can still do this old school exploration where you just go forward and you find new things on the way. A little about my work, the scientific work. I'm still working with the Silesian University of Technology, and we are developing a set of devices for something that I call conservation through cultivation, to use technology, to use the grow chambers to replicate the environments of those plants in order to provide them places to thrive outside of their natural environment. Because let's be realistic, we can't save all of the natural places. We can't save all of the species in the times of mass extinction. But I would like to finish with a quote from Neil Armstrong: "Science is about what is, and engineering is about what can be." And I think this sums it up pretty neatly, because maybe if we cannot save all of the species and we cannot save all of their environments, at least we can use the technology to help them survive and help them thrive, if not in their natural habitats, maybe at least outside of those habitats in artificial conditions, so that we can preserve them for the future generations. I hope you liked the presentation. Thank you very much.
So I forgot to mention, this is being live streamed and recorded. We're gonna need two.
Two.
All right, so unfortunately this is gonna be.
You got this one.
Okay, awesome. There's a reason we need two, which is that we're going to open it up to actually a couple questions, but like I said, we're actually live streaming and recording this. So wait for the mic to ask your question. But I actually have a first question, which doesn't have to do with your work, but you were just mentioning your very first expedition, and just as you said that, it flipped to a photo of an totally destroyed airplane. Were you on that airplane?
Obviously not, because I'm here and not in
Okay.
a grave. So,
Okay, just needed to check.
but I wanted to show how wild, how still unexplored those places are, and how hazardous they are to explore, even until today.
Very cool. Okay, questions from other people?
Hi, Matthew. Congratulations. I would like to ask you to tell a little bit more about your other expedition that I'm aware about. And it's not to the tropical regions, but to the northernmost.
Yeah, last year, basically all my expeditions are focused on looking for some plant to photograph it and to learn about its natural environment. And the interesting thing is that about 10 years ago, a group of Norwegian explorers went on an expedition to Svalbard, and by total coincidence, they stumbled upon a carnivorous plant in the Arctic archipelago of Svalbard. And last year, I believe we were the second group ever to witness this plant in its natural habitat. We made a sailing expedition to the northern sectors of the Svalbard archipelago, to Spitsbergen. And we were looking for this northernmost carnivorous plant in the world. And actually, we found it in the valley of Ringhornalen, which is a very unique place because you're in the middle of this pristine Arctic environment, which you would believe to be rugged. Not a place you would think of as a good place for carnivorous plants to grow. But actually, there is one particular valley that is isolated from the rest of the island, where the climate is slightly milder. It's called the Arctic Oasis because the biodiversity levels there are exceptional for this archipelago. And yeah, you need to take a yacht, you need to sail for a few days, and you need to go to some of the least visited places of Svalbard to actually witness this plant. And we've managed to find it. So that was the last expedition.
I think we've got time for one more question. I saw this hand go up first.
Congratulations, that's wonderful research. Do you plan, or have you been to Colombia's Amazonia, which is also probably rich in species, though probably harder to access?
Yes, I have been to Colombia, actually, together with a friend who is here right now, so we can ask him about the details later. We have explored the savannas of Vichada in Colombia and Guaviare, which is also, it's actually a part of the Guyana Shield as well, and there are tepuis too. It's not as high as the parts of the Guyana Shield that are between Venezuela and Guyana, but they are very, very pristine and very, very diverse as well. So this is one of the places I still am hoping to explore more in the future. The Chiribiquete, yeah. This is a dream of mine. So.
All right, everyone, give it up for Matthias.
Thank you.
Okay, pretty awesome, right? Our next speaker is Angélica Anglés. That's right. Angélica is a planetary scientist from Valencia, but lives in Hong Kong. She is searching for life on Mars, which is pretty awesome, and was part of the landing site selection for Mars 2020. And Angélica travels to extreme places on Earth to find clues about life on Mars. And I'm really excited to hear more about that. So without further ado, Angélica.
Okay, I'm just gonna walk around. I hope you don't mind. When I was a child, I decided I really wanted to do two things in life: play the piano and find life on Mars. Many people told me, of course, I couldn't do it. I had to choose, but I didn't listen to them. And now I can say that I am a pianist and I am a scientist searching for life on Mars. I have dedicated my whole life to those dreams, overcoming obstacles and finding ways to do something that people told me was impossible and out of my reach. I've been told many times, actually, that I look more like a hairstylist rather than a scientist, and that I did not fit in the field I was studying. So despite not knowing a word of English, I left my home and my family in Spain to study abroad in Sweden, in Germany, in London, and in Hong Kong, where I completed my PhD in astrobiology and planetary exploration. Despite the challenges with the language and the studies, I have now a number of publications. I wrote a book about astrobiology with other colleagues, and I am recognized in the media as an expert in this field. And a few years ago, I was appointed the chair of the Explorers Club Hong Kong chapter. What am I supposed to say next? But it is not difficult to make yourself work hard when you want something the way I wanted to be a planetary scientist. But I still don't know if there is life on Mars. So until we humans can go to Mars, we study places on Earth that are very similar to Mars. This is what we call Mars analog environments. So these are places on Earth that were created in almost identical conditions, or that can simulate similar processes as what we can see on Mars. I have been studying for over a decade what I believe to be one of the best representations of Mars on Earth, the Chaidan Basin in the mountains north of Tibet. This is one of the most extreme environments on Earth. So millions of years ago, this area was a giant lake, but because of the Himalayas pushing, it raised the surface very high, all the water disappeared, and now it's very cold and very dry. This is the highest desert on Earth. There is no people living there, no vegetation, not even insects live there. So I go there with my team to study the area, to collect samples, and then we analyze them in the laboratory to see the similarities with Mars. We have found organisms that survive with almost no water, and other organisms that survive at really high radiation levels. And this helps us understand the survival strategies of these organisms and whether we could find the same forms of life on Mars, even today. But these expeditions are not easy. This place is very remote. The closest city is 2 days drive away. I'm always the only woman when I go there. And I always feel very sick because of the altitude. But when we're there, it's very exciting because we're doing real science in an environment that is very similar to Mars, but rare on Earth. The only problem is that there, they only eat yak, which is this cute, fluffy animal. So when we are there, we have to eat yak yogurt, yak butter, yak milk, boiled yak meat, fried yak meat, yak meatballs, yaki. Thanks to my research in Tibet, I was able to take part in what has been so far the proudest moment of my career. I was part of the landing site selection workshops for the NASA Mars 2020 mission that went to Mars a few years ago. So when I was researching a possible landing site, I had to choose a site that gave the rover the best chances of collecting samples that could tell us something about the potential of life. And to do this, I used the analog site of the Chaidan Basin to help me choose. Holden Crater on Mars, the landing site I chose, was amongst the top 10 landing sites considered by NASA. And what you see here is in pink, the landing ellipse, and in blue, the traverse that I created for the rover to explore for life with 7 stops. Even though it was not the final landing site selected, it made me feel I was part of something really big and important for the future of exploration of Mars. I also want to show you a little bit of my last expedition to another extreme environment, Iceland. So Iceland is always one of the best places to study for life on Mars. This is because of the combination in between glaciers, volcanoes, a broad range of different ages, and also the relative isolation of Iceland. So last summer, I was the principal investigator of an expedition to some of the most extreme places in central Iceland. And the purpose was to study how biodiversity and habitability vary in different environments. So after a lot of walking and driving, we collected the best samples for future analysis in the laboratory. And only a few days ago, I finished all my laboratory work in the laboratory in Hong Kong and Macau in China to study the geology, the microbiology, and the mineralogy of my samples, which hopefully can give us clues about the potential of life on Mars. So we're going to see plenty of action in space exploration with the hope that we will keep pushing the limits to our human ability. Mars has a beautiful alien quality, but in many ways is very similar to Earth. It's relatively close that it can be visited by us with the aid of spacecraft and rovers. Children that are now in elementary school will be able to choose whether they want to live there or not. And this is not science fiction. And every little study that we do helps us getting closer. So aside of my scientific research, I'm also interested in other aspects of Mars. Last year, I was part of an analog astronaut mission in a very different environment in Scotland. So I was one of the 5 analog astronauts for the first UK analog space research mission, which took place in a remote, uninhabited, and secret island off the north of Scotland. I am not allowed to say the exact location of the island, but after we completed a pre-deployment training, we were taken by private boat to the island where we had to live and survive for the next 5 days. So the goal was to simulate a space mission to another planet. There are many risks to health in space, so this mission was a simulation, a survival exercise for us, the astronaut, to take care of emergency medical scenarios without any outside help, as if we were in space. Even though the geology of this analog site is, as you can see, not similar to Mars, there were many other aspects of this island that made it a good analog. The situations we were put in were perfect for isolation, companionship, developing leadership skills, and also to test physical endurance, something that the future astronauts of Mars will definitely need. So as you can see, there is no perfect analog, but it is the combination of all Mars analogs that makes us better understand Mars. So whether or not Mars has the right conditions for living in today, the chances are that perhaps one day it will. And should we choose to live there or not, we don't know. But what we know for sure is that if we ever decide to live beyond Earth, Mars is surely the place. Not even the Moon or any other planet in the solar system can compete with the fact that Mars is a world with water, much colder than Earth, but with water. And that is what makes Mars so special. I want to finish my presentation with a last video of a concert I played in Hong Kong a few years ago for the exploration of Mars. So I arranged my music for a specific video of Mars. And I hope after my presentation, you feel inspired to imagine the things that nobody has ever imagined before, and to go where no one has ever gone before.
So which would you choose? Mars or Earth? Earth?
Earth to live,
Okay.
Mars to study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Questions?
Hi, Angélica. Did I pronounce it? So my name's Camila, and I'm from the University of Chicago doing research actually also on the habitability of Mars. So one question that bothers my research a lot is that we know Mars was probably not as oxygenated as Earth, but to find an analog on Earth, we cannot avoid the fact that it's being oxygenated, and it's possible that the life that once existed on Mars were living under the different condition as early life on Earth. So how do you incorporate that consideration in your research when you are looking for the similarity between life in analog sites?
Yes, that's a good question. But in the 7 minutes I had to give my talk, I couldn't talk about it. So, of course, the analogs we study here on Earth are never a perfect representation of what Mars is. So we are studying more what possible past life on Mars rather than life right now. If there is any life right now, we don't think it's going to be in the surface. It should be in the subsurface or under a lava tube or a cave. So, of course, it's never going to be the same, but I think that by studying places that are the closest to Mars, we can get clues on where life could have been before. But yes, you're right. We are never going to find an analog. Even this one in Tibet, which is, in my opinion, one of the best, is never the same. The conditions are not exactly as on Mars.
That's right. Yeah, I really look forward to your next expedition to,
Somewhere.
There
are many analogs. There are many analogs on Earth that are really good, like Atacama Desert in Chile, Antarctica. It depends what you want to study.
Yeah, and if there's opportunity for young explorers like me to join, that would be great.
I always take some students with me to carry rocks and to do that. But last year I got married, so I took my husband instead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can you cook well?
Well, I go to gyms 3 times a week, so.
Angélica, Meade Treadwell from Alaska. First off, is there any life that you found on Earth that has a niche that's similar to what you're dealing with Mars? And the second is another friend who's a member of the club and a NASA scientist tells me he's really worried about the toxicity of Martian soil, that it may not be as habitable as we think.
The type of organisms we found that we think could have been on Mars are called extremophiles because they are extreme. We found organisms in the cracks of the rocks, so they are protected from the outside environment, but they have some access to solar energy and they seem to survive well. Other ones are in Atacama Desert, for instance. In the Yungay area, which is the driest, it rains once every 10 years. But they managed to take the humidity from the environment and create a micro pond. And with that little amount of water, they seem to survive and be very happy there. So this is one of the things that we think, well, Mars is very dry as well, but if there are organisms here that manage to do that, they could have done the same on Mars. Other type of organisms are those that survive under translucent rocks. So because the rock is translucent, it allows some solar energy to go through, but they are under the rock, so they are protected from the environment. I mean, this is the closest we can get to study organisms that are that extreme. Perhaps we don't find the exact same on Mars, but this is getting us closer to see what are the survival strategies of these organisms to survive. And perhaps if we find similar environments on Mars, we could find something similar. That's the hope. It's a difficult question. It could be, that we are trying to find something completely different, right? Like, I don't have an answer for that. Or maybe they were very simple organisms back a few million years ago, and it has nothing to do with the organisms that we are trying to find. So.
Give another hand for Angélica.
Thank you.
My cooking question, by the way, was, if you tell people on expedition that you can carry things, they're like, okay, great, awesome. And you're like, and I'm good at ropes. And they're like, okay, awesome. And you're like, I'm really good at cooking. They're like, oh, okay, come with me. Good. What were you doing in grade 9? 9th grade, I guess you say here. I was playing video games and skateboarding, doing like nothing of value, really, barely doing my homework. Sophia Rückriegel was writing a book about social activism. So Sophia is from Brooklyn. She is now in grade 11, 11th grade. She's done a lot of work in social activism. And like I said, she wrote a book about it. And it's the topic is about how young people can get involved in social activism. Sophia has a passion for exploration, specifically marine life, and has participated in the Sea Turtle Preservation Initiative in Costa Rica this last summer. Sophia is a certified scuba diver. She's working on additional certifications, and this is her first time speaking for a crowd this large, so give it up. She's gonna do great, and Sophia, take it away.
Good morning. My name is Sophia, and I am a high school junior at the Marymount School of New York. I am very grateful to recently become a student member of the Explorers Club earlier this year. I am from Germany and the United States, and I live in Brooklyn. I am particularly interested in marine life conservation and ocean exploration. Last summer, I participated in an environmental conservation program and turtle protection initiative with ASTOP, which is an organization in rural area of northeast Costa Rica that promotes sustainable development and sea turtle preservation. I am also interested in the use of indigenous knowledge and traditions to find solutions to the sustainability of our planet's ecosystems. I would also like to explore the Arctic and climb Kilimanjaro one day. And as much as I would like to build my own capacity in research and exploration, I know it is important to help support local capacity building for exploration and research as well. My own interest in exploration was actually fueled by my interest in social action. But first, I want to start off with a few questions for you to think about. What social action issues are you most passionate about? How can exploration activities be linked to social activism methods? And is there a link between social activism and exploration at all? For me, social activism and exploration are part of the same journey. And I have learned that anyone can get involved in social action initiatives and be a force for social change, even at a young age. And you can accomplish much more than you think when you join forces with local organizations and develop social action and exploration activities with others. The brutal murder of George Floyd in May 2020, coupled with the COVID-19 pandemic, brought the blight of racial, social, and economic injustice into sharp focus in the United States and worldwide. As a teenager, witnessing these differences in access, opportunity, equity, and justice, it raises a lot of questions like, why does it have to be this way? And what can I do to make a difference? That summer, when we were 14 and 12, my brother Killian and I knew we wanted to organize a Black Lives Matter surfing paddle out. A paddle out is a Hawaiian cultural surfing tradition and ceremony in the water and a way to remember and celebrate the lives of people who have passed away. But we didn't know how to get the permits for the local beach to hold the event. We didn't know who to contact in the local paper to advertise the event. There was a lot that we didn't know, and our first step was to ask for help. and to involve local communities of color. And once the Paddle Out event was over, we continued to collaborate with the same organizations. We also co-organized a free panel event to learn about Indigenous water traditions and surfing from Native perspectives with a historian from the California State University of San Marcos, Native Like Water, an Indigenous California-based nonprofit, the Shinnecock Youth Clubhouse in Long Island, Black Girl Surf, and the Surfrider Foundation. Some months later, once COVID restrictions relaxed, we co-organized an in-person cultural surf exchange with the same groups in New York. Many people have asked my brother and I how youth can get involved in social action work. No one really teaches young people how to get involved in social action. You're usually left to figure things out for yourself. In 2021, my brother and I began to write a book for young people ages 12 and up who are interested in social action. Though the book targets young people ages 12 to 24, the book can be useful to anyone of any age. The book was recently published and is called How to Be a Social Activist, How to Plan, Launch, and Support Social Change in Your Community and in Our World. We formed a small publishing company to publish the book and have held discussions with youth about social activism in New York. This is what the book looks like, and we have a few copies to pass around for those who are interested. You can also pick it up on Amazon or order it from your local bookstore. Social action can be a pathway to exploration, and exploration can also be a pathway to social action. At the beginning of my presentation, I asked, what social action issues are you most passionate about? How can exploration activities be linked to social activism methods? And is there a link between social activism and exploration at all? Well, the book outlines 10 key steps to planning, launching, and supporting social action initiatives, and they are largely based on the lessons we learned while co-organizing social action initiatives. These steps are useful to help one think about how one can be a social activist, as well as an explorer and incorporate social activism in exploration work. Step 1 of the book was identify your social action passions. What are they? Step 2 was define your preferred role in social action. In exploration, do you see yourself as a lead of an expedition? Do you want to make speeches in front of the cameras about issues you care about? Or would you prefer to take on a background but critical role of a quiet advocate in smaller groups or manager of research activities? Step 3 of our book was consider supporting the social action initiatives of others first before launching your own social action initiative. Before embarking on your own exploration activity, join the activities of others and learn from them. Support the exploration work of others as you pursue common goals and efforts. Step 4 was do your research. Use information and data to support your understanding of the problem. What is the issue that most concerned you, and what evidence and data do you have to support your understanding of the issue? Step 5 was explore the causes of the problem you want to address with others. What is the root cause of the issue you may be exploring? And what do other people, including local communities and organizations, think are the reasons for the problem? It's important to engage local communities and learn from them in exploration activities, particularly if you are an outsider to those communities. Local communities have knowledge and resources that are not available to you and that you can learn from. Step 6 was develop a vision of change that you want to see in the world. What is the end goal of your exploration activity, and how will it contribute to our understanding of our world and preservation of our planet? Importantly, how can you help to strengthen exploration and conservation capacities of local communities in your exploration work? Step 7 was find and expand your allies and partners. Ask for help and support the efforts of others. Step 8 was engage the media, including traditional media and social media, to enhance knowledge and understanding of your exploration work and its purpose. Step 9, learn the lessons and make adjustments during and after your exploration activity. What could be adjusted and what could have been done differently? And finally, step 10, consider social action as a way of life. Exploration may become your area of academic study, or it may become your profession. For many, exploration may remain a lifelong extracurricular passion. I'm very hopeful for our future. In addition to ongoing social action work, this summer I will continue with my PADI scuba diving certifications so that I can join marine life expeditions. The challenges confronting communities around the globe are varied and complex and require the efforts of us all. Young people have an important role in helping to solve our community's problem and transforming our world. Social action has been my pathway to exploration, and exploration can also be a pathway to social action. Thank you for listening.
Amazing, right, guys? Can I point it this way?
Okay.
Pretty amazing, right? Holy cow. Questions. I'm going to start in the back because I've neglected the back. Any questions for Sophia?
Angélica, spectacular. Thank you very much for that. Have you done any work? Are you familiar with citizen science? No. All right. Then we'll chat about that later. But I think this is a great path, and look forward to helping you in any way we can.
I thought your presentation was excellent. I'm Tony Grogan from Florida. I'm here with my daughter. We both climbed Mount Kilimanjaro 30 years apart. You need to get there before the ice and glacier is gone.
Bring this up for a response. Do you want to respond?
I don't know.
1, 2.
Thank you for your response. I hope to climb Kilimanjaro one day.
Congratulations, that's really great. What kind of aspirations do you have in the future as far as the path that you're on right now after the book that you've written?
Well, so right now I'm like pretty busy with my SATs and ACTs right now, but in the future, I hope to do more work with social action and social action initiatives. I hope to also someday write another book again. Also, I'm also interested in medicine. I participated in a program to go to Peru, and I volunteered at a medical clinic there, and I volunteered and I offered language translation between Spanish and English for patients. So I'm interested in like the medical field. Regarding environmentalism and exploration, I want to continue marine life exploration. I mean, I haven't done that many yet, but I hope to do more in the future, and continuing my scuba diving certifications. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sophia. That's amazing. Okay, moving right along. Next we have Daniel Ortega. Daniel is a biologist and a cave diver, and he uses genetic tools to discover new organisms and understand the ecology of underwater cave systems. He's here to talk about his flag expedition to Sardinia this last fall. So, go for it.
Yeah. How's everybody doing? Good? Okay, cool. So, a couple disclaimers. This closer? Okay. Couple disclaimers. I'm not an English teacher, so if you see any grammatical mistakes or spelling, keep it to yourself, please. Okay, so our field work, pretty tough, right? Bright blue water, warm, right? Horrible. Pizza, we're in Italy. Okay. I can't complain too much. No one's going to listen about it. So let's see. My name's Daniel. I'm a biologist. I say that I'm a marine biologist because that's where all my work is in the ocean and underwater cave systems. I just recently got back from a flag expedition to Sardinia doing underwater cave mapping and studying the biological life of underwater cave systems in the region. We were working in 3 different cave systems, Calaluna, Grotta del Fico, and Belterante. We were able to collect multiple eDNA samples, which we'll go and detail what eDNA means here in a second. Plus, we were able to push some new line and redraw some of the maps. Those of you that aren't cave divers, sometimes cave maps look a little crazy. They are sometimes just lines with some depths. And people who aren't cave divers look at us like we're crazy when they see we don't have GPS units telling us to turn left and turn right, like MapQuest, when we're down there. I am also the co-founder and executive director for the Marine Genome Project. We focus on using marine genetics to push conservation efforts. We also increase the accessibility and knowledge of genetic tools by increasing the languages that these protocols are developed in, lowering the cost and accessibility to it, and we also do a lot of educational outreach. We have a lot of problems facing our ocean right now, as I'm sure all of us are very well aware. A lot of us working in the sphere of marine science, conservation, pollution, or anything else. Some of this is habitat destruction, overfishing, pollution, trash, garbage. Not quite sure how the person who lost their library card is going to return their book, but that's a problem for them to figure out. And the problems facing our ocean have a lot of solutions, and a lot of us are pursuing those solutions here today. But a lot of the problems, we don't have enough information to decide and figure out what we need to work on and how we can pursue these solutions. Using eDNA to rediscover our ocean. eDNA, or environmental DNA is what it stands for, is a fairly new tool in marine science, right? A lot of that information is within universities and institutions because it's generally complicated. It's generally a little bit more expensive than other traditional methods of swimming around and doing spot surveys and biological identification surveys or anything else. But what eDNA is all living creatures in the ocean release DNA into the environment. So saliva, hair, skin cells, or other bodily tissues or fluids are released into the environment. We can then collect these in the form in the ocean or in these cave systems as water samples. We can filter it through a very fine filter, and the DNA sticks to that filter, and then we can capture that DNA off of that filter and tell what's in the environment. It can be used for a couple different things. We can use it to track invasive species. Those of us that are aware of lionfish is an invasive species. You can find it all over the place, and they're causing havoc in our oceans. You can use it to track invasive species by identifying the lionfish, taking samples in a site that we maybe think that they are in, but we haven't visually seen them, and we can identify whether they've been in the area. Because eDNA only lasts a certain time frame in the water, and it's dependent on pH and salinity and a couple other parameters, we can roughly estimate when that species was in that environment. So it can give us a holistic picture when we can't visually see them with our own eyes or cameras or anything else. We can also use it to discover new species, right? Everybody loves to discover new species. That's what a lot of us do. It can be used to help make connections between underwater cave systems. If you have the uniqueness of underwater cave systems, and most of the life in there are what's called endemic. So they usually only live in one cave. So you can have a cave system here and another one over here. And you have one isopod that lives in this little cave system. For those of you, an isopod looks like a little roly-poly, right? Okay, and they might not live in this other cave system, but if we find the DNA between the two cave systems, it could indicate that they are connected, right? Can't make a guarantee that they are, but it's a good indication. There's other tools that we can use this for too. Now, I don't know if you can see this little species right there. Kind of looks like an underwater spider, right? Not a big fan of spiders, but he's kind of cool. In underwater caves, you might be thinking, okay, what does that have to do with our ocean? Who cares, right? Underwater cave systems are unique. They're like the perfect lab for studying the ocean. Okay? Underwater cave systems and the species that live in them have adapted to very low light, low nutrients, low oxygen, and extreme conditions. And over time, they've adapted to not only live, but thrive in these environments. And it gives us the perfect opportunity to study deep sea biology, local ecosystems, and how they interact. In Sardinia, after we're done having some coffee and cappuccinos for breakfast, we get on the boat and we travel to these cave systems. You're in that crystal clear blue water with the big rock face. We roll off the back of the boat. The old diving joke is why we roll off the back is because we roll forward, we're still in the boat. Okay? We roll off the back of the boat, we're in the water. Then we're swimming through the cave system. That cave system, we travel between the marine environment and the shallow ocean ecosystem right into the cave. Some of the species that you find right outside the cave are right there in the opening of the cave system. So then we can understand the species that travel between those two systems. Some of the caves, like Calaluna, that we'll see a video here in a second, transforms from that saltwater marine environment into freshwater towards the back of the cave system. And you have different life that lives in that back section of the cave system. There's also a hydrogen sulfide layer, which is this poisonous gas in the water. It's cloudy, milky white, that there's life underneath in that hydrogen sulfide layer, eating all of the tissues that are in there. It's culturally important in different regions. There's underwater cave systems in Sardinia, in France, in Mexico, and all over the world. They have cultural importance to different communities that are there. And we can learn a lot about the environment, the ecosystem, and how this formed and why these cave systems are there. So let's all gear up and let's go on our dive. Okay. So when we're collecting eDNA, we have a couple problems than when we're collecting it on the surface, right? We have to put all this gear on. We're wearing about 130 to 140 pounds of gear, give or take some. You're wearing these big double cylinders on your back with a couple slung underneath your arm. Some of the guys are carrying big, really expensive cameras that I can never afford, but I wish. And then we have our collection devices. We need to collect this water at different stations throughout the cave so we can get a holistic view of what that ecology, the life that's in these caves, looks like at different points. So we collect at the very beginning of the cave system, right at the opening. We then collect later on, maybe where there's a transitional phase between saltwater and freshwater, so we can understand the species that live in one or the other. And then we collect in, right here, you can see this hydrogen sulfide layer with some of the particulate, so we can understand the different species that live in this area. I think we're gonna switch to the video, maybe, if it plays. I can tell you. What's different and unique about this system is it's a little bit harder to explore due to some of the paths we have to take, and it goes narrow and wider in some sections, so it adds some logistical issues with exploration. What also is cool about the system is, unlike others, when salt water and freshwater come together, sometimes you get sections that are more brackish, where we're not quite freshwater, but not quite saltwater. And that provides a unique environment for understanding, okay, what species might live in this saltwater section of the cave system and this saltwater branch, and what species might live in the freshwater branch of the cave system. And because there's no inner section of it that has this brackish water, it leaves some questions about what species might be able to travel in between the two systems of saltwater and freshwater. Okay, so we went to Sardinia. We had lots of great food. We were in the sun, got a little bit of a tan going. But what did we find? What's really unique about these cave systems is the 3 cave systems we were working in were mapped about in the late 80s, early 90s. The cave maps, we decided that we should add some additional information and increase our understanding. In Sardinia, Italy, these systems are not protected. There's no known importance to these areas. There's very few divers in the region in general, and the amount of cave divers is even smaller. And the amount of information coming out of them about the life in these systems barely leaves the small group of divers and cave divers that are probably in this room too. So what we can use this information for by collecting this DNA is we found a couple new species. Some of them are saltwater species in low lying marine environments. We also found 2 species of fish that aren't native to the region. And we discovered the DNA from an extinct species of bovine that went extinct in 1627 in one of the hydrogen sulfide layers. So there's plenty of work to still do. And it opens up more questions than I could ever come up with. Some of the questions are understanding how DNA can survive and thrive and be later collected in hydrogen sulfide with that decomposing material that's in there. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So what do we do with all this information? Okay, I can collect all this cool information, hoard it all to myself, sound really fancy, even though I'm not. We want to make sure that this information gets out and it's used, right? We're all explorers in this room and scientists to some capacity. We want to share our passion in different fields that we do, and with others, and especially the next generation of explorers and scientists. So we take all this data and we develop educational programs and materials in multiple different languages, specifically targeted to the regions that we're working in. That way, they can get a better understanding of what's going on with their home, right? In the region, their biggest thing is taking tourists on guided boats. And you'll be sitting there in the water, and all of a sudden this boat comes up with 200 or 300 tourists on it to go get coffee on the cliffside, and then they take off, right? We don't understand how that affects the environment because we have no baseline data of what even lives there, what lives outside the cave, what lives inside the cave, or any other information. Our organization is based on citizen scientists. All the team, nobody had a degree in science except for me. Everybody was a citizen scientist. We had a sommelier from France. We had a French filmmaker. We had a lawyer. We had just about every spectrum of educational and career backgrounds. The idea is we want to create a stronger connection with science and us, the general public, right? Because the more that you're involved, whether it's you want to come out and you want to come collect data, you want to help with the educational aspects when we're in the aquarium building displays, you want to help with the photography. I'm not good at taking pictures, so nobody rely on me to take pictures. We need all of that, and it creates a stronger connection and feeling to our blue planet. We also partner with other research and conservation groups to make sure that this information is used widely. We're one of the only nonprofits that isn't a major institution that's doing marine genetics and focusing on increasing the accessibility, making it cheaper and more accessible and easier to use for other organizations. Sometimes the kids ask really hard questions. That was a big surprise for me, right? So saving the ocean is in your DNA. If you have any questions or want to learn more, we have a full-length documentary that was filmed by a fellow member of the Explorers Club, Jeremy Lizelle, who's also an Emmy Award-winning documentarist. You can watch the full documentary on our website. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, first, give it up for So my comment before about how the best skill set to have on expedition is cooking, I guess that doesn't apply to your expeditions. Was the food good on your expedition?
It was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah,
I feel like you were like saying a bunch of that to just rub it in Angélica's face. Yeah,
there was
sure.
no yak. I'm sorry.
Exploration,
Yeah.
hardship, of course. Great.
It was suffering. We were suffering.
Sure, sure.
At some point.
I actually, if I can start with a question, I actually wanted to know about the freshwater portion of the caves.
Yeah.
Are they freshwater because they are linked to the island's freshwater system? And if so, are the species that you're finding there, are those typical freshwater sort of lake and river species, or are they ocean species that have somehow adapted to a freshwater environment?
Yeah, that's great. The short answer is a little bit of everything. The cave system, so Cala Luna is a saltwater system, 99%, at least as far as the line's been pushed. The line ends in a very, very tight section where you are taking all your gear off if you're in side mount configuration, pushing it through, and going kind of sideways through the opening. It is extremely tight and extremely low vis, but it's saltwater up to that section. Most of the species that we found in that cave by far out of the three had the most biodiversity in it. A majority of them were saltwater species. Some of the new ones that we found there were a type of nudibranch that's never known to what was unique about the nudibranch too that we found. It was in a hydrogen sulfide layer, and there's really no known information about how they survive in hydrogen sulfide, whether they preferred to live in that and they've adapted to do such in that cave system, or he was just traversing between it and got stuck on there. And then the freshwater section, a lot of the freshwater, the species we found in there are common for other lakes and river systems, and some of them have adapted, such as like some of the isopod species that we found there.
Other questions? Over here. And then I'll go to the back in the corner there.
Thanks for your presentation, Daniel. At the beginning, you mentioned that there was a short life expectancy, if you will, for the DNA. How have you managed to find and maintain a relationship with a DNA processor that ensures that your data set is long-term consistent?
Yeah, so most of the DNA processing we do in-house. We have our own sequencer and everything like that. We do partner with some outside labs to do some of the work just because, you know, we are a small organization, so that I can only go so many different directions for certain things. The difficulty is that the DNA, we're not quite sure. We haven't nailed down because it's based on the environmental conditions in the cave systems, but we use a self-preserving filter pack. So when we're out in the field, it allows us to bind the DNA to that, bring it back to the lab, and process it there. So we have a little bit more of a controlled environment than out in the field, and it also helps with some of the logistical problems to preserve it.
Thank you for the lovely presentation. I have a couple questions about cross-contamination, if there's any concerns over what you're collecting, and then also potentially how you could be influencing the organisms that are already there, and if there are those concerns, what are you doing to mitigate it?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so cross-contamination, especially with eDNA collection, is huge. It's one of the biggest problems. There are very few, almost no existent protocols for collecting underwater. A lot of them use robotics, which is great and fantastic. The biggest issue when you have these underwater cave systems is some of them require dry caving and hiking and carrying a lot of equipment. And every little ounce matters when you're carrying a lot of equipment and you're underwater. Plus you have your limited time that we can stay underwater while we're doing work. So what we're doing right now is we're working on some passive eDNA collection devices that we can leave in the cave systems and come back at a later date to collect. From cross-contamination, we have to be very careful with bringing DNA from cave system to cave system to make sure that we don't, like you said, cross-contaminate or influence or discover DNA that wasn't actually there. We just brought it from another cave system. So that includes sterilization of, head to toe of equipment, everything down from, the fins we're wearing and the mask and everything else. Plus you have the element of human contamination. While I'm in the water, I've got saliva coming out of my mouth, out of the regulator into the water, and everything else. It's not feasible really to eliminate complete human contamination. But we do the best effort with, sterilizing all of our equipment before we return. Plus, we allow for a couple days in between each of the cave systems that we sample from for any of the DNA that we potentially had missed or dragged in or brought ourselves to dissipate between sampling sessions.
One more hand for Daniel. And guys, I'm so sorry. I see there's like so many hands, so many amazing questions, I'm sure. I want to mention that all of our speakers are going to be around. A lot of them are going to be at the dinner. Hopefully be here tomorrow, Sunday. It's lots of fun. And so feel free to come up to them afterwards. I'm sure they will be happy to answer your questions at that point. Next, we have Sacha Hony. She is an astrophysicist, an artist, and a professional dancer. Just to make you feel like you're not doing enough with your own life. She studies the history of the universe, and I really love this. She said, you can think of it as if I'm an archaeologist of the universe, which, how cool is that framing? She brings together art, poetry, storytelling, and science, and she's here to talk today about the work of the dark energy spectroscopic instrument. I'm glad I said that third word correctly, and about her contributions to finding out about dark energy, which is 70% of what our universe consists of. So pretty big stuff. So without further ado, Sacha.
So good morning, everyone. First off, I want to thank the organizers for putting together such a cool event and all of you for taking the time to join us this morning. Something that goes along with exploration and that we've heard in other people's presentation is the word map coming up. So if you want to explore something, you need to map it out or go explore it and then you make a map from it. So here, I want to tell you about the largest 3D map that we as humanity, actually, we did that on your behalf, are creating of the visible universe. This is the only one in existence and this is the largest one in existence. So first off, I want to tell you a little bit more about what that map is, what we can learn from it, and then how we've created it. So that map is actually measuring the distances of everything that we can see from Earth, meaning galaxies. And it looks, because you want something to shine, so and it looks exactly like this. This is actually collated small images from telescopes that are mapping out 1/3 of the sky visible from Earth, meaning if you are in the northern hemisphere and you look up, this is actually everything that you can see. And how you would have it on a celestial dome, but then just flattened. And so if you zoom in and keep zooming in and keep zooming in, you see these like little granularities. Well, actually, all of this are galaxies, these little points. And again, like I've said, now you can think about it as a longitude-latitude system. So you know where they are in a flat plane. But if you want to make that even more informative, what you need is the distance. And for that, the distance from you. And so for that, I use a technique called spectroscopy. And now, let's say on this image, these are the closest galaxies, and the ones further away, and the ones further away, and the ones further away. From just this flat image, you're able, if you look here, to then build, like you're putting clues in perspective, a 3-dimensional map, just from, again, taking those pictures. Now, you've also probably heard that nothing can travel faster than light. And that's very true, but the speed of light is finite, and our universe is just, big in a way that we cannot fathom with our own minds. And that means that whatever is coming from here is taking a lot longer to travel than what's coming from here. And that also means that the information, by the time it reaches us, it's outdated in the sense that it gives us information from way back in the past. So from this 3D map, you're also building a time machine. You're also having snapshots of what happened at different moments in the past. And so from, again, just taking pictures of our sky, we're able to access information of what happened in our universe in the past. And we get this chronology of how things came to be the way they are in our universe. Cool. So we take pictures, we go from 2D to 3D, but why do we care except for creating a history of that universe? Well, the cosmic history, you've put that in perspective. Now let's look at actually what happened. What happened is, the laws of physics started to make sense, and that's the Big Bang, and that's when the universe started to conceptually exist with our the way we can understand it. And you have this soup of primordial particles that then start moving away from each other and expanding very, very fast. And actually, it's opaque. We cannot see what happened at that point. And then, whoops. And then from here, you have the first light. And finally, we can see what happened. That light is traveling to us. And you have the formation of the first stars, the first galaxies. One galaxy is made of millions of stars. And you have galaxy clusters, which is millions and millions of galaxies together. Just to give you an idea, we live in the solar system. You have, several planets orbiting one star. And so if you try and put that into perspective, there's just one star in our galaxy, the Milky Way. The Milky Way is not even particularly remarkable in size. It's actually quite small. And this is just one of billions of galaxies in the universe. I'm just trying to give you like a sense of like the scales that we're talking about here. And if this is our point of view from the cosmic history, you would think that, okay, we're mapping out where all the galaxies are, and it's like I'm throwing rocks in a pond. They're all landing at random in space. Actually, not quite. And that's what we're gonna see if we take snapshots, again, at different moment in time, is the galaxies follow an underlying primordial pattern, and we can measure this pattern at different moment in time. And the size of this pattern only depends on the fact that our universe is expanding. So if you're drawing a circle on a balloon and blowing into that circle, the only thing that's gonna, into the balloon, sorry. The only thing that's gonna, inform the size of that circle in the balloon is just by how much you've blown into it. And so you could tell me, why do we care? Well, what is causing our universe to expand faster and faster is something that we call dark energy. And dark energy, we know what it does, but we do not know what it is. And it's gonna influence the size of that pattern. And therefore, by making this very precise 3D map and measuring the size of that pattern, we're able to learn more about dark energy because, theory number one is gonna give you that, dark energy is gonna have this influence on the pattern, and theory number two is gonna give you this, and theory number three is gonna give you this. We are building, again, this real life 3D map. So we're able to actually make those measurements and compare it with the predictions and then pull out the theory of dark energy that actually matches reality. And that's the scientific process. And so this is what we can learn from this 3D map. Now, something that I want to highlight is it's not that easy to do. So what are the technical prowess as a community across countries, across cultures we've had to overcome? So if I take just this one galaxy, it would take me 20 minutes looking at it with a sort long exposure camera to be able to tell you how far it is. Again, I mentioned we're doing 1/3 of the sky visible from Earth, and we're doing millions of galaxies. So you want to be more efficient than one galaxy every 20 minutes. So we actually built an instrument that gives us 5,000 galaxies every 20 minutes. And this is called, the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument. When we're talking about explorations, that's something else that I want to bring up is for us to explore what happened in the past of the universe, the most efficient exploration that we can do is to wait for that real information to come to us right here. But we need to be able to conceptualize what we're expecting so that we can grab that information properly. And so, whether it's from Earth or from a satellite, to us, those distances are so tiny. We're talking about much, much larger. And so the most grand expedition that we can do is actually to stay right here, but to know what to look for and get that information properly. And so the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument is located in Tucson, Arizona, in this telescope. That's where it is. And this, I want to show you a little bit the instrument that we built. It took 10 years to design and commission. Oops. And like, you know, I'm not that tall, but you could see then how much bigger this instrument is compared to me. And then all of these are the 5,000 little robots. Think about it as single eyes that have a camera attached to them that can collect all the little photons, the light that are coming from those galaxies. And those little robots, I brought one for you here. You can come and see me after the talk and have a closer look. But so they kind of dance and move around to be able to match exactly where one of the galaxy that we want to look at is. Yes, so you can see them. This is not the full capability, but it's a very nice video of it. Yes, so this is, I showed you from the front what they look like. From the back, this is the electronics. One of the summer, I was working in Tucson, replacing some boards. So you see a lot of cables, a lot of electronics. And this is, I want to show you just the seriousness of the faces in the control room before we put the instrument on sky for the first time. That was in October 2019. I'm right there, and I was actually the scientist in charge of observations for that night. And this is the relaxation after nothing exploded, everything worked fine. And we felt a lot more confident about, you know, being on sky actually for 5 years. I also want to highlight that the team of people that we're working with is across the globe, incredibly diverse and inclusive. And this is one of the nights of observing that we did. She is the telescope operator, a Polish woman living in the United States. This is one of my Italian colleague and friend, now also living in the US, that was coming to help out looking at the data quality as we were taking those data. And so that's me, I'm French, living also in the US, and conducting the night of observing. I'm gonna let this play while I keep talking to you. And see, we have been fully on sky now for a little less than 2 years. You know, we had COVID in the middle, we had to stop. And what you're seeing, this is after 1 year of collecting data. This isn't a simulation with, you know, mock points. These are the actual positions of every galaxy, around 13 million that we've collected in the first year. And this video is actually part of a planetarium movie that I helped create that talks about the work that we're doing. Because another part of, you know, making this map and trying to understand, you know, what dark energy is and doing the work that we do is to communicate that to the general public, because again, we're doing all this effort on behalf of everyone. And this planetarium movie, you're gonna see as we zoom out and zoom out and zoom out. So each point is a galaxy. Again, if you can just imagine the scales, because you see how big our galaxy is. You see the space in between all of those galaxies. So the space already in between galaxies is humongous. I just really want to imprint the vastness, because when we talk about exploration, and we should, we're really excited to go in space, but it's going in space and exploring even, you know, our solar system, and even if we go outside of it, this is equivalent of me doing this. This is so in our neighborhood. Compared to the vastness of the universe. And so that planetarium movie is available to any planetarium on Earth, so you can request it. It's called 5,000 Eyes, and go and see it at your local planetarium. We've made it available in French, English, Italian, Chinese. We have international members of the collaboration, so all of us contributed to do you know, dubbed version in our own languages. If you want to see these little tiny robots work, we have, you know, if you scan this, you'll be able to see modelization of it. And I really hope that I got you excited about the work that we're doing.
Questions?
Hey, I'm just curious about what are the unique challenges to get one of these telescopes up and running?
Thank you for the question. How much time do you have? So some challenges is something that we're in an era where we have a lot of data available to us, and a lot of the people who come into techie field, you just grab data and assume that you can use them. But I think we're kind of forgetting what it takes to collect quality data, and something that I've realized working on this project, the fibers that I'm showing, they're 1/3 of a human hair, and we need to position them on sky to a level of precision that is, again, literally split hair. And to be able to do that, the robotics that you need and the control, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of parts that need to work to their absolute best. And when you have a chain, for everything to work perfectly, this is a complicated process. And so you have a lot of different things that go together in terms of engineering aspect, but then once you've gotten the data, you also need to be able to understand it. And again, we're not able to go, this is something that comes from the conceptualization of something that happens so incredibly far away. So for you to be able to properly extract the information from those data, we make simulated universe. And so, for example, it's also a lot of machine learning and computational power. And so there are so many different aspects to properly doing what we're doing that we're pulling into many different resources, and understanding how to combine that. It's very exciting, but also very hard.
Another question?
Hi, Satya. Thank you for your presentation. I'm curious, if you find some answers to the question of dark energy, what do you think the implications would be for us here on Earth?
So one of the reasons we're studying so intently the past of our universe is because of our understanding of the laws of physics. If we understand very, very, very precisely what happened in the past, we're able to predict what's going to come in the future. And so that's one of the main motivators, is, except for curiosity, is to get a clue at what might be coming to us. But again, we're talking about scales where maybe more of our children of children of children. But yeah.
Round of applause. Satya, thank you so much. Okay, next we have Alexandra Clement. Alexandra is from right nearby in Queens. She started as a woodworker, working on with wood from fallen trees in South America. And with that work, she's honed her skills. Now she makes fine furniture and high art with some of the most difficult woods in the world to work with. And she has a piece at the back somewhere. It's in the corner that you guys can go have a look at after. It's really amazing. And from there, she got into work in, she has a reforestation project in Panama where they are searching for endangered tree species. She's also founded the not-for-profit called Endangered Rainforest Rescue in 2022, and she'll tell us all about all these amazing parts of wooden trees and her work with them. So.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Clement, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about the lost tree species of the Darien Gap. Now, when I first tell people that I work in the Darien Gap, I usually get one of two reactions. Either people have never heard of this place, they have no idea where it is, or they get a look of shock and fear on their faces. And that is because the Darien Gap is known as one of the most dangerous rainforests in the whole entire world. But I would say the reasons why really depend on who you ask. So the Darien Gap is located in Panama at the end of the Pan American Highway. The Pan American Highway actually runs all the way from Alaska to Argentina, but there is a break in that road in Panama where you cannot cross to Colombia. And in that space is the dense tropical rainforest of the Darien. Now, a quick Google search on the Darien will pull up a plethora of stories on migration in the area. Migrants are known to cross by foot through the Darien Gap to reach North America from South America. The reports from this brave endeavor range from the threats of narco-trafficking, human trafficking, theft, assault, and this is all coupled with the dangers of a jungle that's filled with venomous snakes, raging rivers, mudslides, big cats. But something that I often don't hear about when the Darien is mentioned is how it actually stands out to be one of the most biodiverse tropical rainforest habitats in all of Central America. And the reasons why are really, really fascinating. So a little bit of history. Previously, North and South America were separated, big ocean in between. But years of geographical phenomena led to the eventual rise of a land bridge that connected the two continents, opening up migratory pathways between the Americas for the first time ever. And this led to a breathtaking amount of endemic species found nowhere else in the world. If you were to look at a history of the Earth, the Darien would appear towards the very end, making it one of the newest places in the world. So who am I, and why am I traveling to this really dangerous jungle? Well, my story actually started out after college. I was working for a construction company, and I went down to South America to purchase lumber for this construction company. But when I was down there in South America for the first time, I saw the material that I was supposed to be buying, this wood, and I actually fell in love with how beautiful it was. But more importantly, I fell in love with how beautiful the rainforest was. And I decided then that I couldn't be a part in destroying this place. But I also felt this intense desire to somehow show this beautiful wood to the world. This idea led me on years of expeditions to the middle of the rainforest to find fallen trees that were often blocking pathways for different indigenous communities in the jungle. And when I had gathered enough of this material, I sent it back to New York City, and I taught myself how to become a woodworker and make fine furniture and sculptural art out of some of the most dense and rare wood in the entire world. But every time I was traveling down to South America, I would notice from my airplane window that the rainforest was rapidly disappearing. These very tree species that I had become so intimate with, from finding them on the jungle floor at the end of their life to sculpting them in my hands in New York City, were being threatened to become extinct forever. And I knew one of the only places to find them would be in the Darien Gap. I decided then to switch my expeditions from finding fallen trees into finding seeds of endangered tree species for their reforestation. I've been doing this now for 7 years, and I've reforested thousands of these endangered tree species. And in 2022, I founded the not-for-profit Endangered Rainforest Rescue. Okay, so native tree species are the backbone to an entire rainforest ecosystem. The loss of just one of these tree species leads to a devastating ripple effect that affects the plants and animals who rely upon them. On a typical expedition, we'll be walking for days in the rainforest to find one of these trees that we're looking for. And during that time, we're also collecting samples from these trees. The hope is to find their seeds. That's what we're really wanting. But if they're not producing seeds during that time, we map the tree's location. So what we're collecting samples of is the leaves, the sap, measurements, anything we can. And that is because identification is so difficult in this highly unexplored area. There are said to be thousands and thousands of tree species that are yet to be identified. So we usually aim for 2 trips per year, one in the rainy season and one in the dry season. But it's been increasingly difficult to travel during the rainy season because of the increase in storms due to climate change. So when you first are traveling along the Pan American Highway, when you enter the Darien, what used to be large swaths of tropical, untouched rainforest is now perfectly inlined teak plantations. Now, teak is a non-native tree species to Panama. It's actually from Asia, but it's very commercially profitable. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. But the effects of planting this non-native tree species has been disastrous to the biodiversity of the area. It's completely cleared it, and it's been disastrous for the soil. I don't know if that video is going to play. No, we skipped it, it's okay. But the number one cause of deforestation across Panama continues to be the ever-expanding agricultural frontier and the clearing of land for cattle. As land in western Panama is depleted, they are rapidly moving towards eastern Panama, where the Darien lies. We could be walking for days upon days in the rainforest and come across a clearing like this that has been illegally burned to either plant crops, graze cattle, where there's illegal mining operations or illegal logging. But living amongst this beautiful place are the Embra, Wunan, and Kuna. If you ask them what they consider dangerous in their home, they would often smile at you and tell you that there are no problems here. They have learned to have a symbiotic relationship with their rainforest, taking only what they need. And this is something that I wish our society learned a long time ago. Without them, I could not do any of this reforestation work, and they've helped me so much. I mean, it would be impossible to do anything that I've done. So at the end of the day, we live in a society that favors profit over people, and we take resources from the earth that we will never get back. So if someone were to ask me, what is the scariest thing about the Darien Gap? I would say that it's the fear of losing it forever. Thank you.
You stay there. Amazing stuff. Very cool. Was that the piece? That's the piece that's in the back?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I'm going to bring that up after.
Okay, I can go grab it. And while I'm doing so, questions?
Sure. Thanks very much. Firstly, congratulations for what you're doing over there. We're doing reforestation work in the Amazon, so I know how complicated it is, and you know, working with humans and doing reforestation is pretty complicated as well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about. You talked a lot about teak. What are the main tree species that you're working with, and how do they like commercially compare with teak? Like, are any of them able to compete?
Well,
with the
hopefully
teak?
not at all. I would say that, of course, there is illegal logging going on in the area for tropical hardwoods at large, but I would say that's definitely not the number one cause of deforestation. It's kind of like more of a secondhand thing that happens. But as far as teak goes, it's just been disastrous because it's non-native. So they would rather plant that than sell their own beautiful tropical hardwood species. And I mean, I don't want to see them sell any of it. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No, the question is more about like, could you replace the demand for like planting and growing teak with something?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I mean, I try to
focusing.
stay away from that, from planting any sort of like monocrop culture. I think we need to get away from that. But I would say if I were recommending anyone who's buying tropical hardwood, probably don't buy it if you don't know exactly where it came from. Yeah. But it is always better to buy tree species that are more unknown. So if you haven't heard of the name, it's probably a good thing because that means it hasn't been overexploited.
More questions?
Given that the Darien Gap is one of the newest places on Earth, are most of the, if not all, the tree species angiosperms or flowering trees?
Yes, there are many of those, both. Absolutely. Yep.
So both conifers and conifers are still there as well.
Yeah, I mean there's so much biodiversity amongst that forest. You have every type there, so you're getting everything.
Amazing. Thank
you. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much, Alexandra.
Thank you.
Okay, last but certainly not least, we have one of the coolest, most interesting, and most novel presentations. We have François here. François is the Chief Curiosity Officer at the, sorry, I wrote this down wrong, at
the Curiosity Company.
The Curiosity Company, there you go. Very fitting. And François uses tracking of wild animals on foot as a way to catalyze curiosity, and speaks about how curiosity is an important skill to lead us into the future. He's a Fjallraven friend, and he has his cap with him that he has brought along with him on more than 1,000 kilometers of tracking, which is a long way to go. So without further ado, give it up for François.
It's on the desktop. There we go. It is a cold morning in the vast African wilderness. The desert air in the Kalahari is crisp, and I can smell the dew on the wild sage. There is no wind as the sun comes up, and I kneel down to touch the sand, feeling how ancient stories flow from underneath the red dunes and into the sky. I start walking with my friend Tutso. They are the sun people from the Kalahari. We are tracking an oryx, and I walk quite fast. And sometime into the walk, an elder puts his hand on my shoulder and whispers, "You need to walk slow to give your soul time to catch up to you. That's how you will find what you are looking for." My name is François Malherbe, and I work between Cape Town, South Africa, and the Okavango Delta in Botswana. I founded the Curiosity Company, and I'm currently the Chief Curiosity Officer. My study started with industrial psychology and progressed from there into career coaching to address and better anticipate the future of the world of work. I've also been an expedition leader for almost 2 decades after the allure of the vast and inspiring African wilderness took hold of my heart. That's me. I'm a Fjallraven ambassador, and with my Lapland jacket and Kalahari cap, I clocked 1,000 kilometers on foot this year in the Okavango Delta. Using the ancient art of tracking wild animals to teach young explorers and corporate leaders a future-proof superpower skill called curiosity. Our discoveries are showcasing how ancient solutions are solving modern problems, and how this will lead us into the 5th industrial revolution, which is what it means to be human. We live in a fast world driven by algorithms that manipulates our minds with answers. As we know, the future will pivot around our capacity to solve problems, especially environmental problems. Our society has become increasingly good at giving us answers before we can even formulate a question. And in doing so, we have forgotten the art of asking good questions. We have forgotten how to trust a process, how to have a long and steady commitment and obedience towards building a relationship with an unknown environment. It's scary not to know where you are, even more so when you don't know where you are going, especially regarding our own individual processes of self and career exploration. It's a daunting task to be a true and brave leader in this time. The process of pursuing a vocation is very crucial, but it is the beauty of the process that matters most. Tracking a kudu, for instance, might give us some clues to understand this beautiful process-driven connection. A kudu, when it walks, would put the back hoof exactly where the front hoof stepped, just like a lion or a leopard. This is called registering. They do this to be stealthy and quiet, living up to their nickname, the grey ghost, and they can disappear in the blink of an eye. What can a kudu teach us about minimizing our footprint on Earth? My colleague Dr. Helene Smith have developed a concept of depth exploration and depth leadership, with the mission to work beneath, between, and beyond ourselves for a thriving psyche, community, and planet. By combining the principles and fundamentals of a tracker mindset We have formulated a model in which we use the ancient art of tracking wild animals as a metaphor and vehicle for what we now call depth exploration. Carl Jung said that the world hangs on a thin thread, and that thread is the psyche of man. There are ancient answers locked up within our very essence of being. Jung reminds us that the history is not only contained in thick books, but that it lives now in our very blood. Without exploring the depths of ourselves and the systems in which we live, we cannot unleash our full potential or address the wicked problems we face on this planet. Depth exploration invites us to have remarkable insights about our ecological niche again, our place within society, and the rediscovery of our intuition and subconscious aliveness. Depth exploration can be seen as a form of vocational wayfinding, which is the art of figuring out where you are going when you don't actually know your destination. My friend Dave Evans at Stanford University Life Design Lab says that for this, you need a compass and a direction, not a map, a direction. Ladies and gentlemen, curated curiosity plus reflection equals your story. Curated curiosity plus reflection equals your story. And welcome to my world of tracking wild animals in the Okavango Delta, the place where a river dies in a desert and a paradise is born. We use a medium of tracking and the language of symbols to reveal narratives about a future that wants to emerge. Through tracking, sorry? All good? There we go, let's give you guys a nice image like that. Through tracking, we learn about the habits, behaviors, and movements of wild animals. Tracking can also help us better understand the complex ecosystems that these animals inhabit and the interdependent relationships between different species. The first part of a tracking process is a surface process, or factual tracking. You start asking questions like, what animal is this? Where did it come from? Why was it here? Where is it going? By looking at the curiosities of the track, we determine the size of the track, the sex of the animal, how fast it walks, how much it weighs, how old the track is. And then, with the narrative beginning to form, we start tracking. We learn the way the animal moved and why it did so, until the inevitable happens. You lose the track. The San people from the Kalahari taught me that in that moment, you have to lift up your head. We forget to look at the bigger picture when fixated on a problem. Look up and feel how the second part of a tracking process wants to take over, called intuitive tracking. Now, these are not hobbits, and that's not the Shire. These are a bunch of corporate leaders, and that's in the Okavango Delta. There we go. If I was a lion, okay. If I was a lion, where would I go? Why? How? When? Is there water ahead? What is the wind doing? Are there squirrel or vivid monkey calls, alarm calls in the distance? How would this animal eat? Where would it sleep? How does it interact with its environment? Don't just do something. Stand there. Drop down to the level of the eye of the animal and look for clues. Maybe some sand got picked up by the pads from the early morning dew and was left on 3 flat blades of grass on the sand. When specifically tracking lions or leopards in the Okavango, I would have the expedition crew take off their shoes and walk barefoot, because these cats prefer the path of least resistance. Tracking in its purest form is an immersive, whole body exercise as you set out to think, breathe, smell, and feel like that animal you are trying to reach. Equally important is the way you become aware of your own scent and the way it moves over the savanna, the way you walk, touch, and feel. That, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the ways I teach future leaders empathy, intuition, and integrity. How we use tracking as a key to unlock the world of depth exploration. And that is how we learn to understand behavior without judgment, but with curiosity. When we lose our way, it is the questions that count. Curiosity will take you where you need to go to learn what you need to learn. It is our greatest ally and mentor. Our souls are the inheritors of historical memory and ancient truths. We are never lost. The wilderness knows where we are. It wants to find us. We have to patiently allow the patience for shy truths to reach us. Curiosity is slow and inquisitive because it wants your soul to reach you. As my favorite poet, Rainer Rilke, reminds us, practiced in the presence, patience is the art of courting the future. More than 2,000 years ago, a famous Greek philosopher coined the following Latin phrase, semper aliquid novi Africa adfere. There is always something new out of Africa. For us, it is the age that it's unfolding, the age of exploration unfolding in Africa. Pushed forward by curiosity and compassion, we can rewild our souls to protect and conserve our natural environment and to solve the problems worth solving. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I would like to invite you to come and experience the Okavango Delta with me. To send your dreams to the Southern Cross at night, to look for sand on a blade of grass, and to see for yourself how trust has a speed, how curiosity has a pace, and how courage has a beat. Thank you.
It was like watching a pit crew work in a NASCAR race. Well, François, super amazing, very cool stuff. Questions for François in the back there.
Thanks. Thank you, François, for that amazing presentation. Just to question, when you're tracking wild animals, particularly in the Okavango Delta, and because of the fact that it's such a very different terrain from the Kalahari with the floodwaters changing, how do you track them? How do you track the animals like through the floodwaters? Or do you just track them at certain times of the year, especially when the flood hits the Delta? How do you track them then?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and water, we should all know, is a very, very important thing we need to conserve in the Okavango at this stage. So depending on the water levels, if you've tracked an animal, and just to distinguish, you get track and sign, which I love. Guys, come visit me. It's really cool. You've got the data, you're making sense of it, and then off you go. And so now you hit a river, and that's where you really have to then make sense of that intuitive way of knowing. If you're in the flow and you can understand, okay, a leopard might have not gone through here. Leopards and cats and lions, they don't like water. So, okay, so we're going to go left or right. But an elephant would crash through there, and so you make sense of the bigger picture by understanding the essence of empathy, understanding the essence of its behavior. If there's that's how we predict behavior and by noticing patterns, right? So you can It's like, that's a Rubicon, actually, literally, is to be able to go, okay, if this happened here, what do we anticipate would happen there? Well, and it's happened that we tracked something once and it got really late and we had to cross a river in the dark. I didn't put that video in there, but we had to wade through this with the rifle and the backpacks and everything, because at the end of the day, it's the pursuit, it's the process that matters. You get some rivers you have to go through, but that's how you understand how you can be, all of you, the highest expression of your passion and talents and skills is to keep going, even if you don't know what's on the other side.
More questions? We got one more question, and then I think we'll have to cut it off there.
Thank you. It's a very interesting curiosity you're developing in a very exotic and difficult to reach place. Are you considering finding perhaps more accessible locations, or are there other places you would like to expand this into so that you are able to yourself learn the curiosity again, because it's not such a familiar area for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I went to do that Fjällräven Swedish Classic last year with the guys up north in the Arctic Circle, which was incredible. You almost come. It's a really amazing. You go there. It's an amazing experience that Fjällräven creates. And whilst I was doing this trek, it's just north of Kiruna, close to Kiruna, high up in Sweden. All I could think about is, will I find an Arctic fox? Is it going to happen? Will I find an Arctic fox track? But more than that, the tracker mindset, the mindset of an explorer, creates an opportunity for us to look with the eyes, curious eyes at our everyday life. I mean, I would love to go and track pumas in Patagonia or snow leopards in Ladakh, or even elephants in India. But so it doesn't matter where you copy it. It's where it's a copy paste the whole time. It's the mindset for me that matters. It's the way we learn the art of asking questions again in our everyday lives. But for me personally, I mean, this tent that I stay in, I live there for a month on my own. I love being out there, recalibrating, connecting. It's oxygen for my soul. So that these environments is where I get my energy. But the trick is for us all to learn that curiosity should be applied every single day of your life. That's the mindset of a tracker, the mindset of exploration that matters most.
Give it up for François. So with that, that's the last of our speakers. I just want to sort of give my takeaway from, I think François' presentation really highlights what we've seen in all of these presentations and what, frankly, Brianna, Lizzie, Grace, and I and others have seen in 4 years of running this speaker series, which is that when we look at what the young members and young explorers are doing in really reshaping what it means to be an explorer and reshaping exploration, what we see is the combination of traditional fields, traditional practices, traditional activities with novel approaches, with novel techniques and novel questions. And it's so exciting to see. I mean, you guys just saw, these are unbelievable people doing unbelievable things. For those of you who are other young members, keep up the great work. We hope that this inspired you. We hope that someday it's going to be you up here giving these presentations. I can say that we got way more unbelievable applications this year and every year than we could possibly take. Like, we had to cut some truly remarkable presentations this year, and it was really awful experience to do so. But, there's always more years, and that just speaks to the unbelievable talent that's coming up in this club, which is a great thing for our area of exploration, for this club. It's really amazing. For older members, as much as, we'll find ways as young members, as much as we're innovating and figuring this out, your support is absolutely critical. And that means whether that's something super direct, as in taking on a mentees, or either just in your own work or through the club, whether that means supporting the different programs that the club is doing, or just keeping in mind that, you know, this is a field that if it's going to continue, it has to continue through our generations, because, you know, this is the future of exploration, of science, of fieldwork. And so, again, your exploration, or your support of young members is critical to the whole process. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for coming. Lizzie's going to say something after me. But before that, let's give up another huge round of applause for all of our speakers.
I just want to echo Adam's thanks for all of you and ask that our speakers all come up to the front. We're going to present each of you with a certificate from the Explorers Club of our appreciation for you taking your time and giving your talks today. So come on up, and we're going to hand you our certificates, and we're going to get a group photo of all of our speakers. So everyone can remain seated for just a minute, and then you're welcome to come talk to all of our wonderful presenters today. So thank you to everyone.